I remember while growing up as a child in my grandparents' home that every Sunday night we would sit down in front of the TV to watch one of television history's most esteemed investigative journalism shows. It was called 60 Minutes. Strangely enough, the day came that I actually watched my own grandmother featured on 60 Minutes. At the time, she was probably the most well-known criminal court judge in the country, famous, or infamous, for her harsh sentencing of criminals with a history of violence against innocent citizens. Australia had its own version of 60 Minutes. After the positive response to my grandmother's appearance on the American show, Australia's 60 Minutes traveled to Miami, Florida to tape their own segment on my grandmother for their Australian audience.
If you think that one of the answers to the rising crime rate is tougher prison sentences, then here's someone you'll love, Judge Ellen Morphonius. Around Miami and the Dade County Courthouse, they call her Maximum Morphonius. During the 4 terms she served on the district court bench, she has routinely handed out the stiffest sentences possible. As you'll see, some of them belong in the Guinness Book of Records.
If somebody has committed what I believe to be a horrendous crime, particularly if it involves a crime of violence, the odds are rather high that they're going to get the most that I can give under the law.
That program aired in 1989, but the same year, another edition of Australia's 60 Minutes aired, one that dealt with even darker criminal elements than the ones in my grandmother's episode. In an episode entitled Satan's Children, 60 Minutes in Australia dealt with the satanic ritual abuse of children, telling the story of a young British girl who was abused over a 10-year period, beginning when she was just 5 years old. The news crew traveled to England to film the episode. The host of the show said that it was the worst thing he had ever reported on in nearly 3 decades. To protect her identity, the name of the girl in the episode is called Teresa, and as you'll see for yourself, her story is terrifying.
Teresa is now 15, but at the age of 2, she was left in the care of this woman, the grandma she called Nan, and that, she says, is when her torment started.
Who was the leader? Who was the boss of the gang, of the cult?
At home it was my nan.
Your nan made you have sex with animals?
Yeah. Like goats and donkeys.
The story of Teresa is a story almost too horrible to recount. A case of child abuse that goes well beyond the kind of things we normally associate with the abuse of children. In 27 years of reporting, it has to be one of the most painful stories I have ever had to tell.
How many men or how many people would have sex with you?
What, at one time?
Yes.
About everyone who was there, which must have been about 20. You know, from 10 to 20 people. If it was a big ceremony, it used to be 30.
What would your grandma be doing when these men were forcing themselves on you?
Usually laughing. Or smiling. Or having sex with another man. Or other men. Friends of the family and strangers, and my family used to rape me. Make me abort the babies I had.
It would be hard to imagine more misery and suffering than what Teresa says she's had to endure.
And us kids would be made to do things with the adults and the animals. And then a sacrifice would happen.
The sacrifice, were these animal sacrifices?
Animals and people.
Child rape, human sacrifices to Satan, are such stories fiction? Sadly, some people truly do believe that they will be rewarded by Satan by abusing and sacrificing innocent children. And it happens more often than people care to acknowledge. Take, for instance, the 2014 case of Corianne Cervantes. She was a 15-year-old girl who was tortured and killed by 2 young men, Jose Reyes and Victor Elias, who sacrificed Corianne as part of a ritual to give their souls to the devil. According to court testimony, after kidnapping her, Reyes and Alias raped Corianne, an element almost always present in satanic ritual abuse. Afterward, they began beating her in the head with an ashtray and even strangling her with a belt. They also beat her with a toilet tank lid. When she bit one of them in self-defense, they repeatedly punctured her face with a screwdriver and gouged out her eyes. Police found her body with an upside-down satanic cross carved into her stomach. Where else have we seen satanic symbols cut into the flesh of the stomach? This is a photo of Marina Abramovic. She admits to having carved this pentagram into her own flesh. Abramovic is the Thelema sex magic witch who emailed Tony and John Podesta to invite them to her house for an occult spirit cooking dinner using blood, breast milk, and semen as ingredients. Consuming human fluids such as blood or solids such as flesh is a component in many satanic rituals, a component that Teresa is all too familiar with.
There was a tramp who was brought in once, and he was killed. He was cut from his throat down to his stomach, and they ate him, or bits of him.
They killed a man at a ceremony?
Yeah.
In front of you?
Yeah, in front of all of us.
Did the tramp, did this man fight back?
No, I think he was, drunk or something. He seemed really dopey. He was laughing a lot when he was brought in. And he started screaming when they began to cut. But after a while, he died. I'd seen a few killings before then. Although I wasn't used to it, that was the worst one. I really don't know what I thought. I suppose I thought, thank God it's not me.
Let me get this right now. Are you saying that you saw more than one person killed in that house?
Yeah. I've seen loads of babies killed there. Just newborn babies. Or aborted ones, which were only small. 4-year-olds. Any age, really.
Did they ever say they might kill you?
They threatened to kill my little girl, who, when I left, was still at the house.
A friend?
Huh?
What little girl?
My little girl, Alex. She's about 4 now.
You mean you had a child?
Yeah.
How old were you when you had that child?
11.
Motherhood at the age of 11. But from what Teresa told her mother, it wasn't the only pregnancy.
We think about 7 or 8 times. It's hard to say. It was constantly happening from the time she was capable of being pregnant.
What happened to the pregnancies, to the babies?
They were aborted by my nan or by one of the doctors at the house.
There were doctors there at that house?
Yeah, there was 2, I think. Yeah, and a nurse.
What would happen to the fetuses, the unborn babies?
They used to be taken away most of the time, and one time the baby was taken out of me and then killed in front of me because it was still alive.
And then, what would happen?
Well, after they killed it, they would eat it. But we were also made to eat it.
You were made to eat your own fetus?
Yeah.
Who made you do this?
My nan.
Between 1979 and 1980, A series of bodies were discovered by police in Fall River, Massachusetts. The victims were young women who had been bound, raped, and tortured to death by a satanic cult. The body of young Doreen Levesque was discovered bound with fishing line. She had been sexually tortured, stabbed repeatedly in the face, and ultimately killed by stoning. This story deserves its own episode in our series, but what unites it with all the other stories, including the story of Teresa, are the elements of sexual abuse and ritual sacrifice.
During these ceremonies, was Satan, the devil, ever referred to?
He was called Lucifer.
What did they say about the devil, about Lucifer?
That killing the people made him happy.
Sacrifices to please the devil. According to Teresa, the worst rituals took place at a house somewhere in the country.
It was big, expensive. From the front, it looked like a castle. It had a long drive and big double wooden doors.
Do you think they were rich people then?
Very rich.
Now, where was this big house somewhere in the country? Teresa says she can't take the police there because the Satanists made sure she'd never know how to find it.
Teresa was always drugged, or on a couple of occasions she says she was knocked out, so that she never fully knew the route.
On what scale do you think this was happening?
Enormous, far beyond what we've ever heard of here before.
Unfortunately, during the 1980s, something called the Satanic Panic spread throughout the United States and beyond. Intermingled with genuine cases of ritual abuse were some claims of Satanism which were not legitimate. Many of these incorrect claims resulted from the controversial practice by some in the mental health profession called memory regression, a form of hypnotherapy that was used to help children recover lost memories that had been suppressed as a result of severe trauma. While most of the children had in fact been abused in some way, the addition of satanic ritualism was often introduced by the therapists themselves, resulting in the creation of false memories. However, in the case of Teresa, her memories did not come to her as a result of therapy, and her stories are corroborated by extensive medical records that demonstrate long-term childhood sexual trauma.
A chronicle of debauchery and depravity so horrific it's hard to believe. You have to ask yourself, could Teresa be just making it up?
No. I know what's true and what's not. No, I know what I saw.
This couldn't be a terrible dream, a nightmare that you're reliving?
No. It's no dream. It's a nightmare, but it's not one you can wake up from. It's there all the time.
This really happened? You're quite sure of that?
Yeah.
The police don't think Teresa made up a story. Some of the cult members are to stand trial. 5 men have been charged with rape. As for Nan, the grandmother, she's 61 and lives in this council flat in South London. She's charged on 7 counts of aiding and abetting rape and 2 counts of performing abortions on Teresa. If you're finding this hard to believe, so did I at first. But then there are the medical reports, evidence of sustained sexual abuse.
Teresa's story is not a fabrication. Between her testimony, her recollection of names, places, and events, as well as the medical records that substantiate her claims of nightmarish sexual abuse, the police who investigated her case believed that she was telling the truth, as did the mental health workers and news reporters who spoke with her. Yet many people still wish to discard Teresa's testimony as nothing more than outrageous lies told during a period of satanic panic. So I spent 2 days digging for any evidence at all that would disprove Teresa's claims. Among the places I looked was a discussion thread on Vote, where researchers were debating whether or not her story was true. I took the time to read every one of the more than 600 messages posted in the discussion. While there were many people who claimed that her story had been debunked, not one of those hundreds of messages contained any evidence whatsoever that refuted anything in Teresa's testimony. That is because her story is true. For nearly a decade, Teresa was subjected to horrors by a satanic cult that few people can even imagine. And such satanic ritual abuse continues to this day, from Hollywood to Omaha, Nebraska, all the way to Washington, D.C. Despite some claims of satanic abuse being untrue, or nothing more than hysteria and false memories, the fact remains that children today are being exploited sexually by evil people who believe that they can gain the power and favor of the devil if they can but appease him by terrorizing, violating, and sometimes consuming children. As long as that evil practice continues, so will our efforts to bring this evil out of the darkness and into the light. For the End Times News Report, I'm Jake Morphonios.